Welcome to the Mildura Weekly, and joining me today is Mark Bennett, ANZ's Head of Agribusiness and Specialised Commercial. Mark, welcome to the studio.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
Can you just explain your role with ANZ?
Head of Agribusiness for ANZ in Australia, and that means I'm responsible for and in and amongst farming throughout Australia as we bank it at ANZ, and from small kind of farming all the way through to sort of sub-institutional grade farmers and first stage food processors. So the usual range of commodities and landscapes, and into things like winemaking and meat processing and so on.
Well, ANZ's just released its 2020 Commodity Insights report, which would make for interesting reading, I think. Agricultural commodity prices, of course, fluctuate with demand, and of course we've had the drought impact as well. Just tell us what the report says.
Well, they do fluctuate, don't they? And of course, no matter where you're at a point in time, you know the cycles will inevitably come through. But we generally, when you look across the board in key agri-commodities today, we're trading at near record, but certainly good historic levels. And so, whilst more is always better when it comes to price, it's actually turns focus to cost and seasons and things like that really get in the way of maximising the potential given where commodity prices are. And of course, we have a strong underlying demand story continuing. The story of Asian and China population growth, especially as the middle classes rise into higher patterns of spending, still is our big opportunity here in Australia. But beneath that, we've got a supply side issue, of course, where drought in particular has been knocking us around for a while, and a shortage of water through the Murray-Darling Basin area as well.
Well, a lot of challenging issues for agriculture, and drought being primary amongst those allied to that water, and that's a big ticket item in this area. And you've been out and about in the field today, and probably dryland farming you've visited, I imagine, but it's a big concern in this part of the world.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and we've actually been on some irrigated country today, again, I think obviously water trading at a higher cost, depending on how much water you own and control versus how much you have to trade from the temporary market, how much the season is pressing you to use more than you maybe normally would, are making it difficult for a lot of producers. But that said, I think if you look at the commodities in the report, if we go to maybe some of the fresh produce categories first, it is the kind of things that we're growing in the Sunraysia that is seeing real almost boom times in commodity prices over the last few years. So I think citrus, table grapes, almonds, particularly off the back of a range of very beneficial free trade agreements and market access that's allowed this much sought produce into markets of Asia, have really pressured the local domestic supply chain to pay a price to compete for that quality fruit, and that's been a real win for growers around here. So we've seen some really good seasons in the lead up to what we see now as a shortage and high cost of water. That's certainly playing to the economics of farming, but a lot of it's in pretty decent shape. You just wouldn't want this continuation, I guess, because the longer it goes, of course, the more it catches up with everybody.
Yeah, well, we've seen some good rainfall in the northern and certainly New South Wales region.
We have.
We hope that that's a sign of the drought breaking.
Yeah.
What other regions other than Sunraysia are doing well at the moment?
Yeah, the rains are obviously incredibly welcome, and particularly for parts of Queensland and northwest and central west New South Wales that has received a lot of rain, and it's triggered a response in livestock markets. We can see that coming through the indicators. If we think the Eastern Young Cattle Indicator pushing to 600 cents, if we see the National Trade Lamb Indicator pushing to 800 odd cents, they're prices that are really keeping them in record territory, but we actually need animals on the ground and out the other side before farmers will make money from a lot of this. But the down the shortage of supply in cattle and sheep has had a lot to do with continuing higher prices, and of course not everyone's been able to benefit from that. No. But if you were, for example, farming in a Hamilton in Western Victoria, or even a Warrnambool for dairy, or parts of Tasmania and northeastern Victoria, fires aside, we've actually seen a lot of farmers being able to benefit from a good season as well as very strong commodity prices. The pressure will now be on around how do we actually, how do farmers access capital and make good decisions about, having been in prolonged drought, getting animals back onto the farm, getting a crop back into the ground, and getting through another season, and hopefully a good one right to the end, so that they can be better. But we're sort of against the odds. Our big protein markets for cattle and for sheep meat are really strong off the back of a cattle herd that's dipping, somewhere around 25 million and less. The sheep flock at, south of 70 million head now, around 65 million head. They're way down from where we've been before. And it's been playing out now for 5 or 6 years, and as we start to rebuild, the drought has impeded our capacity to rebound. But that's supporting prices, and so these herds and flocks don't recover quickly, and so on a commodity side, you can actually see a lot of opportunity and possibility for a while, if we could only get some seasons to go with it.
Yeah, it always amazes me how resilient the agricultural sector is, the farmers and their families and their communities.
Yeah.
And we're close to it here with places like the Mildura, and it's a credit to them, but they always seem to bounce back. Yeah,
they do, and they will again, I'm sure. It's been really difficult, I think, especially for those that have suffered an extended period of drought, especially. Most farm businesses that we see these days position them, understand that cycles come and go and seasons come and go, and they position for that, and they know there's always going to be a knockout, and with management and know-how, rolling into the next season is something that most people can do and do. But when the drought has gone on for so long, in some cases, farmers have had to resort to the plan B, C's and D's, have eaten into their herds and flocks way more than they would have liked to, generating cash flow, hanging on, knowing that the rebuild would be longer once the season breaks. I mean, it's wonderful to see the season breaking in so many parts right now, but there are other extreme events like the fires, for example, which has impacted some farmers significantly, where that's a different kind of, it's a shorter, sharper trauma maybe, and it's difficult to recover from and respond to as well. So, I think between the farmers and industry and government and banks, there's a collective response to this that I'm certainly seeing, and there's a view that because the opportunity is so good out the other side, that there's a real need to do what we can to make sure people can be in a position to do well out the other side. And it doesn't mean that an underperformed business, for example, is suddenly a better one because the season gets better. Those issues are different, but the market opportunities are there, and when you consider things like advancing technology, data, science that is finding its way into agri, that can make some real dramatic changes to productivity, which would support profitability in the longer term, then the future's still really great if we can just get an even run at the weather.
Tremendous. Well, look, thank you so much for coming in today. We really appreciate it. It's been very interesting.
Thank you. Anytime.
And be sure to get all your local news at milduraweekly.com.au.